Okay, so we are back, UFC 10, Birmingham, Alabama, July 12th, 1996. They call it a milestone in the martial arts history. The octagon awaits. They still have my notes here say legs open up the gate. They still have let's open up the gate as the closing line, but they're also trying to push this seeing is believing as well, which I honestly prefer. Let's open up the gate doesn't work for me, okay? Quickly, just to psychoanalyze this thing, right? They're getting a lot of heat for the whole human cockfighting and brutality thing, just that whole deal. When really, if you watched the sport, rarely are you taken aback by what you see in terms of the brutality. Gerard Jordeau KOing Taylor Tully at UFC 1, okay. Tank Abbott, John Matua. But I mean, that could happen in boxing. Maybe Remco and Orlando Veit at UFC 2, but again, there's the possibility for a violent KO in boxing as well, and it rarely happens. So if you actually see UFC for yourself instead of what you're being told about it, you would understand that these brutal knockouts aren't as regular a recurrence as you might think or what you're told. But we come out of that to the state of Alabama, where we run through the history of Alabama and civil rights, and then something about baseball. But here we are at the State Fair Arena, of which they're pushing as being in the progressive city of Birmingham, the progressive state of Alabama. I've never been to Alabama, so I cannot speak to its progressiveness. And I wasn't born in 1996, so I can't speak to the progressiveness of Alabama at that point either. Maybe someone in the comments can, maybe while you're down there, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We are on the journey through the early days of UFC. Hit the notify bell to stay up to date on that. But we go to Bruce Beck on commentary. He runs down the tournament, the matchups, and then we run through the rules of the octagon. We see our commissioner, Art Davey, smoking a cigar cage side. Now, I've shown him here before on the videos, but Bruce provides information that he's seen his first MMA event, in a fucking Bangkok nightclub in 1969. Now, I need to know if there is any video from 1969 Bangkok showing MMA fights, so, if you could, you know what to do. We get the arrival of Mark Hall, my absolute favourite, if you couldn't tell. And I mean, I don't hate this guy, but his over-the-top celebrations without having won anything just kind of pisses me off. And so thankfully, we are feeding him to the wolves, because out comes the Predator, Don Frye, and here's Bruce Buffer announcing his first UFC event, which is nice, good for Bruce. I suppose maybe he can come back someday. And here we go, first fight of the night. Don Frye slams Hall straight away into half guard. Some nice body shots from Frye, and then we end up in full guard. Frye with the headbutts, more body shots. Hall has some purple showing on his ribs already. Just a few minutes into the fight, he is bruised badly. We get to the 5-minute mark and we are still here, by the way, just in case you are wondering. Guard is like MMA's favourite position right now. We always get stuck here. Don Frye has apparently gone to the Shamrock School of Wrestling, where we never even try and leave the guard. At least Don Frye's landing, but good lord, I never thought we'd see Don Frye like this, just stuck here. Mark Hall, I mean, he might get up and celebrate lasting longer than 5 minutes in here with Don Frye, but Big John stands us up to check on Mark Hall, and they ask the doctor to come in. This is complete bullshit, right? Because he can't even fucking walk. So how are we even considering, okay, doctor, can he come in? Can he still continue? I think Mark Hall must have said that he's fucked, because Big John calls over Don Frye, raises his hand, Don Frye is through to the next round. And I swear at one point in that fight, Mark Hall said, I can't breathe, and they still tried to let this go on. But next up, we have Scott Fiedler with the worst hairline I have ever seen in my life. He's up against Brian Johnston, who's trying to do his best Hoist Gracie impression, and here we go. Why has Scotty cut his hair like this? I have no answers. By the way, that's braided at the back too. He's got the fucking... I don't even know who goes into the fucking hairdresser, barbershop, whatever, and asks for this. But the fight begins, and holy shit, Johnston with the judo-style throw to start us off. They scramble. Scotty, again. Who the fuck asks for this haircut? What the fuck has happened here? Did he lose a bet or something like that? he might have lost the bet. He definitely lost this fight. Johnston ended up on back mount, and I was I was watching this and I get so distracted by the hair that I think he finished it off with ground and pound. I think I swear to God, I was so distracted by Scott's hair that I looked up and the fight was done, and I'm pretty certain Johnston wins with ground and pound. So he's through to the next round to face Don Frye. Next up, though, in our next fight, we have the debut of an MMA legend, Mark Coleman, making his first appearance in UFC. He tried out for the Olympic team recently, obviously in 1996, not recently now, for fuck's sake. I seen a video of him in Rampage at the strip club, and his Olympic tryout days are long behind him. But he's now up here against Horenstein, we'll call him Steiny for short. He is representing the survival discipline. Like, I don't even know what the fuck is going on here with these disciplines anymore. I think you can just say anything and they'll put it on one of the metal signs and carry it around the octagon. You can literally just say anything. Coleman shoots, and there ends up being a bit of a struggle here before Coleman gets in the top position. He's straight into mount, few strikes, back into half guard. He pokes Horenstein in the eyes, lands a few more strikes. The fight is over, right? Coleman advances, and let's put this out there, right? Even after the fight was over, which he cheated to win, you can see the roid rage on Mark Coleman. Like, he is HGH'd to the max, and it really shows here. Like, he is so roided up. I have no idea how he thought he was going to get into the Olympics. I don't even know if his wrestling was the problem or if it was the fact here, you are leaking juice right now. Like, you have rat poison clouds just radiating off you, the amount of fucking steroids he is on. But that is besides the point, because he's through to the next round. And just as a final comment here, I don't know how you actually feel going in there right before you're about to fight Mark Coleman. Just looking at him like that, you must just see, again, the steroids, it's just insane. You must be so terrified. But next up, we have a biology teacher from Staten Island, New York, John Campetella, and he's up against the returning Gary Goodridge. The fight starts and Campetella takes it to Goodridge, actually. Clinches him against the cage. Goodridge ends up pulling guard, which I must be so conditioned to modern MMA, because as soon as he done this, I actually went, oh, for fuck's sake, please no. But I'm forgetting we're back in 1996, so pulling guard isn't even the worst thing. He lands a few strikes, and, well, he reverses the position. He doesn't land a few strikes from bottom. He's on bottom, reverses position, lands 3 strikes maybe. Big John dives in to stop this fight. I didn't see a tap. I didn't see the Harold Howard fucking throw up the vampire exorcism cross. I didn't hear him say, stop the fight or I quit or nothing. And Big John just dived in there. And that's it, done. Goodridge is going to face Coleman in the next round, and he starts taking his clothes off, Derek Lewis style. I don't know if Big John seen, a tap or what he heard. Campetella maybe hits the mat once, and then John dives in. I think he might have thought that was going to be the first of many taps. But looking at it here, he lifts his hand back to try and control the leg of Goodridge. I think this was an early stoppage. But then again, I'm not a referee. Don Frye makes his way back to the octagon for round 2. He's up against Brian Johnson, and we are joined on commentary by Tank Abbott, who says Johnson should just throw in the towel now, and asks why everyone's copying his steez with the gloves. And I have to agree now, everybody in here is wearing gloves. Tank Abbott has become my favourite commentator already. He is the most unserious guy ever. Brian Johnson is really bringing the fight to Don Frye at the start here. And has Don Frye, as much as you can say, a bit of trouble. Don Frye wasn't able to just take him out in seconds. But this is why first round fights are so important, because you can tell Don Frye is a little tired. He was in there for 10 minutes and Johnson was only in there for 2. You can really see that effect in the octagon right now. Don Frye gets the takedown and gets the back of Johnson. Tank is talking all this shit, saying that Frye's just trying to run down the clock. The crowd start chanting USA for these 2 Americans as Frye moves into side control. He lands some nice elbows and Johnston taps out. Don Frye is through to his second UFC final for the second UFC tournament in a row. And now Tank Abbott says something apparently so heinous that UFC cut the audio feed and made it like a very noticeable cutaway and then returned to Bruce Beck almost mid-sentence looking at the next fight. I have no idea what Tank Abbott said. The sentence up to that point was, anybody that steps into the octagon has to have major size, and then it just censored them like bleep. It cut away, the audio got cut. They made these weird edits. I don't know what he could have said to have been censored and then retroactively cut around and edited out. If anyone knows in the comments, and like if you know what he said, I'm sure Tank Abbott will not be back to commentary again, but let me know. In our second semi-final, we have Mark Coleman versus Gary Goodridge. Now I recognise the coach here in Coleman's corner. He was here with Dan Severn before and Don Frye, and I'm not sure what's going to happen if we get to the final and it's Coleman versus Frye. I don't know if this guy's still with Severn and Frye, or maybe not, maybe he's just with Coleman. But Coleman takes down Goodridge and we are into guard again. After a few minutes, Goodridge is able to get back to his feet and recognising he's in Coleman's corner, he then scales the cage sideways and walks over to his own corner to get coaching from his team, who tell him to use his elbows, and he's actually able to momentarily get into a dominant position in the clinch before Coleman then takes his back and into the fucking nuts and butts position, a cult favourite of some modern day UFC fighters who love a body lock. But then we get a break before Coleman takes down Goodridge again into side control, and then he takes the back, he gets the hooks in, and Goodridge just taps before he can take any damage. And there we have it, our UFC 10 tournament final. We have Don Frye versus Mark Coleman, two MMA legends in the final. You love to see it. And I actually spoke about that for it was the UFC 8 final between Don Frye and Goodridge, and it was nice to see two people whose like names you would recognise from today going back then, and seeing them both in the final is great. That's how I feel about this one, except even more so because Mark Coleman, I don't think it's controversial to say, had more success and was better than Gary Goodridge. So it's nice to see two guys that not only are they big names in MMA legends, but they're both like top of the line, successful for at least the early days of MMA. So Bruce Buffer is introing his first main event here, and he doesn't quite have the famous call of "it's time" just yet, but he does a good enough job, and I said it earlier, I suppose we can have him back someday. Don Frye is here after having fought for 15 minutes already. Mark Coleman has already fought for 10 minutes. I don't know what his break was like in between the semi-final and final because we have no super fight, but Coleman starts by shooting on Frye, who stuffs the initial attempt. Coleman is able to transition to backside, like when we move to the ground, we then move into guard. Coleman tries to land ground and pound. Frye does a pretty good job of blocking, so Coleman then just like forces himself down into headbutts, and that opens up the cut on Frye's face. If you've seen during the intros, Don Frye has a black eye, so Coleman was able to open that up. Coleman attempts a submission on Frye, who is then able to escape, and we are back to the feet. Like a scene from modern day heavyweight, right? As soon as these guys get up, they both stand there in the middle of the octagon, making no contact, hunched over, hands on knees, right? These guys are so tired. And I would have loved to have seen this fight if Mark Coleman had had an extra 5 minutes in either one of his first or second round matches, because, oh man, I wonder what that would have looked like. Coleman takes down Frye against the cage, knees him in the face, he's just riding him against the fence at this point. Coleman is on top of Frye, and the ref stands him up to check on Frye's cut. And Frye's old coach, again, the Mark Hall effect, this just pisses me off. He's at the side of the cage, like running around, throwing the fucking, like whipping the towel round, already celebrating. Like, what did Don Frye do to this guy? to piss him off to act like this, right? This is your old fucking boy. This is your old student. What the fuck? Coleman is so gassed, and he's asking how long is left in the fight. We're 6 minutes in, by the way. We're 6 minutes in. Don Frye's walking down Coleman, who backs up, just looking for a spot to shoot. Frye ends up tripping, stumbling, and falling into a double leg on Coleman, who stuffs the attempt, obviously, because I don't even know if he meant it. Like, I am rooting for Frye so much here. He ends up on top of Coleman before Coleman just fucking double leg picks him up, puts him down against the cage, hits him with a couple nice shots before taking him down again with a big forearm. Just holds the forearm over the throat, knees to the head. He's just too big for Frye. One final headbutt before Big John stands this up and asks the doctor to check on Frye's cut, and it's Big John calls the fight, and I am very disappointed, but that is just sometimes how it goes. I think if he'd let that fight go on for just one more time until he had to check it again, if he'd let that go on for another few minutes, I don't know how much more tired Mark Coleman would have got, and then who knows. But that's that. That's how that goes. And there he is, the UFC 10 tournament winner. After 11 and a half minutes of weight bullying, Mark Coleman wins his first UFC tournament in his first attempt. And this was a nice way to close the first 10 events, or after the 10th event, the 11th technically, but with the ultimate being a 7.5, we'll just say this is the 10th. And this does feel like a checkpoint in the history of UFC. This was one of the best tournaments that they've put on, to be fair to them. And after UFC 9, I feel like this was a nice return to form, and we'd earned this. Like, there was no finishes in under a minute. That's one thing I do enjoy. But the first round, the fights were still pretty good, and so were the fights in the second, and the final was probably the fight of the night. So all in all, a very good event, solid, consistent, and that's actually the biggest part. That's the best praise I can give this. And that sounds like quite disingenuous or, whatever, like really consistent's the best thing that you can say about this. But seriously, a consistent night of decent to good fights, that is all you can really ask for. And that's what this event delivered on. And being an hour and a half long, minus whatever they cut out from Tank Abbott on commentary, I can see this event ranking quite highly on our ranking video. Like, the difference between UFC 9 being 2.5 hours and this being 1.5 hours, night and day. But until then, we have some recapping to do from our first numbered events, 1 through to 10, and the ultimate. So subscribe, hit the notify bell to stay up to date with all of that as it drops. We're on an insane run of activity right now. Just putting that out there. The channel, we're doing really well. So like the video, comment your own thoughts below. Who was your original GOAT from early day UFC? What was your favourite event? Let me know in the comments. And that will do it from me and this first chapter of UFC history. Like and subscribe, and I will see you all next time.